School at Morehouse of Medicine. During medical school, he started a real estate investing company and authored the book, The Med School Survival Kit, How to Breeze Through the Medical School While Crushing Your Exams. This book has now been read by thousands of students worldwide. He then completed an orthopedic surgery residency at Tulane University in New Orleans, Louisiana. He spent 1 month in Bogota, Colombia, South America, completing an externship in advanced shoulder and elbow surgery. He then did a sports fellowship at New York University in Langone. During his time at NYU, he worked with professional athletes covering the New Jersey Devils, as well as the Jacksonville Jaguars. He is currently the podcast host of the #1 educational orthopedic surgery podcast, and he nailed it ortho, which he started during residency and has now authored multiple best-selling books. He currently works with athletes across multiple sports and treats many of them locally, including martial arts fighters. Please give a warm welcome to Dr. Wendell Cole.
Whoa. And Delta Epsilon Mu, thank you so much for having me. It's an honor to be here. Truly humbled that you're sitting down listening to me speak. And if it's okay with you guys, I would just like to share a couple stories about my life, some of the things that I've learned along the way as well. So this is me. This is when I was 16 years old. My parents were both immigrants from the Caribbean, and so I was born here in the United States. And by the time I was 16 years old, I was an introvert. I was super introverted. I like to stay to myself. I like to play video games. I was one of those kids. And I was so introverted, I didn't go to my senior prom. I didn't go to senior prom. I wasn't in the school yearbook, but I did play football throughout my 4 years of high school, one of the things that my mom made me do. And it was good because I had to start something and finish it. And it was at this time I was just kind of like letting life go by, right? I wasn't really interacting. I wasn't really out there as much. So I decided, or me and my mom, we all decided I was going to go to college. So one day on my birthday of senior year, I got a letter in the mail from Harvard inviting me to apply to be a student. And of course, we all thought this was like divine intervention. It's like, oh gosh, Harvard messaged me on my birthday. I must be getting in here. So I applied to Harvard. I applied to a bunch of other schools as well. And as the letters started coming in, it started being a denial letter, and then another denial, another denial, another denial. And every single school that I applied to, I got declined, everything. So it was probably around springtime of senior year, and we're trying to figure out what to do. And then I got another message in the mail from another university saying, hey, why don't you apply here? We'll waive the application fee. And so I applied, I got in, so cool, we got into a university. And so it was at this point where I tried to figure out, I knew I had to kind of get out of my comfort zone. I wanted to make a change because I was just kind of letting life go by. And I know in order to get out of your comfort zone, you need to do things that you don't like to do. And for me, that was talking and interacting with people. But I knew in order to grow, this would be the time of my life that I would see a lot of growth. So I had to do the things that I didn't want to do. So when I went into college, I ended up being a referee for intramural sports. I ended up joining a fraternity. I also ended up joining multiple organizations. I was a part of a Caribbean organization. I was a part of the pre-health organization. And I even did a little bit of acting. I was a part of the theater. So I would study, and after study, I would go to rehearsals. And then this is me actually playing a construction guy in a play many years ago. And so I kind of started to realize that I had a lot of things that I wanted to do, and I also wanted to do medicine. And so I had to figure out a way to incorporate the two because I just didn't want to do just one thing. I had things that I wanted to do and accomplish in my life, but I also wanted to be a doctor. So one of the things that I really like to do is I like to travel a bunch. It was one of my dreams to be able to go and travel the world. And so when I was in school, I ended up doing a study abroad in Cordoba, Argentina, at the University of Cordoba. I studied medical virology. We were there for around 3 weeks or so. We were doing pipetting and titrating stuff. This is biology major. This is the stuff that I did. And again, I made this point that I wanted to go pre-med and go to medical school. So raise your hand if you love standardized tests. Like you wake up in the morning, you're like, there's nothing more than I would love to do than to take another standardized exam and study for the MCAT, study for the SAT. Nobody? Okay, yeah, that was me too. So I hated taking exams. I hated standardized tests. I didn't think I was a good test taker. I hated reading. But I knew in order to get into medical school, we had to take this exam called the MCAT, a Medical College Admission Test. Some of you in this room may be studying for this or may have taken this test, for those of you that are pre-medical. And back when I was doing it, there were 3 sections. So there was one section on physics, there was another section on biology, and then there was another section for verbal. And I was pretty decent at math, so I figured I'd do okay on the physics. And then my major was biology, so I figured I'd do okay on biology. But then the verbal section, I hated reading, and all of the question stems were like 3 paragraphs long. It was like 3 paragraphs, and by the time you got to the last paragraph, you forgot what was in the first paragraph, so then you had to reread it again. And I was like, oh, this is gonna suck. So I studied a ton. Like if I was going on a road trip, I'd be the guy in the back seat reading the book, going over the questions, and when we get there, we do whatever, and then when we leave, I'm back studying. And back then, there were, again, 3 sections. Each one was 15 points, so 15 points for physics, 15 points for biology, and then 15 points for verbal, and the average score was a 25. So I ended up taking it, and I ended up getting a 25, which is right, on average. I did a little bit above average on physics, above average on biology, and below average on verbal, just like I thought I would. So I said, well, this is it. This is me. This is what I've done. I also worked as a waiter on all the weekends. So on my weekends, I had to work as a waiter. And I said, all right, I'm just going to go. I'm going to apply to medical school. We'll see what happens. So I put in some applications. I started to get some secondary applications. So I was like, okay, this is cool. And if you look at that screenshot, it's not an iPhone. This is an Android from years and years ago. And at one of the medical schools, I knew one of the deans just through connections. I knew one of the deans of one of the medical schools that I really wanted to go to. So I would go to him, and I remember having a conversation with him because I applied there, and I was like, hey, so what's going on with my application? You got an interview or what? And he said, I'll come into the office, and he told me to sit down. I was like, what do I need to sit down for? Okay. So I sat down, and he told me that they all looked at the application, and he just said that we won't interview you because your numbers are too low. Your scores are too low. You can't get into this medical school. So again, I got the we won't interview you. I was blown, I was sad, but at this point in my life, I realized that I've gotten no's before, and no to me just means next opportunity, right? So you just figure out what's the next thing that you're gonna go to. And there's a medical school right down the street that I was really interested in going to. And I remember a couple days later, I got in my car, drove all the way down to the med school, got out of the car, I walked into the front door, and I walked into the admissions office, and I said, hey, I'm a student right down the street. I really want to come here for medical school. I'd love to be considered as a student here at the medical school. And so the guy probably looked at me, he's like, who is this kid? And he said, okay, so you want to be a medical student? I said, yes, sir, I want to go to medical school. And he said, okay, well, they're doing some class over there right now. The medical class is about to start if you want to go and join them. So I said, okay, all right. So I went, sat in the back of the class. I was probably like 18 or 19 at this time. So I'm like the student in the back, just sitting there. Everybody's probably looking back at me like, who is this kid? And they're having their lectures. Everything's going way over my head. I have no idea what they're talking about. But I would go and I would sit in on these lectures. I would sit in on the medical school lectures here and there. So I'd be that one kid in the back, have no idea what's going on, but just happy to be there and say, oh, this sounds cool. I don't understand it, but this sounds cool. Like one day maybe I'll be able to figure this out. So applied, just waiting, and it was Christmas Eve of my senior year, and I opened my email and I got a message that said, just got into medical school. So I was so happy, I was excited. It was Christmas Eve, it was a nice Christmas present. I was super happy, right? This is what I wanted to do, this is where I wanted to go. And later on I found out, I got another message that said, you are one of 9 students selected to get the Coca-Cola scholarship, paying $40,000 of tuition for each year for medical school. And then I looked, I was like, are you sure this is me? Let me just make sure this has my name on it. And it did, and I was like, wow, this is crazy. I didn't expect to be here or to do this, but hey, I'll take it. And so some of the things that I learned from my journey of getting into medical school is that you may not get where you think you want to go, but you'll end up right where you belong, right? You're going to end up at the place where you needed to be, and that's what happened with me. So when something doesn't go right, or you think doesn't go right, there's a plan down the line for you, even a better plan. Then other thing I learned is sometimes you just got to walk in the door and say what you want, and that's what I did. So a simple idea can change the world and rewrite the rules. Act on your dreams. This is something that I wrote, again, around the same time. And while I was, preparing for medical school, I had this idea that I wanted to start this phone application. I wanted to try to connect people with different things that were going on in the city, but I had no idea how to do it. And so what I did is after class, I would go to class and I would study, and then afterwards I'd go to the library and I'd go and I'd pick out books, and I'd pick out books on, okay, this is how you start a business, this is how you do a trademark, this is how you do a patent, and I would read them. So I'd have a stack of books, and I also have my pre-med books, but I'd have my stack of books and I would read and try to figure out how to do some of these different things that you need to do when you want to start a business. So I figured out how to do a trademark, so I applied for that on my own, and I figured out how to file for business stuff. But then there's something called a patent, and a patent is some lengthy thing that I couldn't figure out how to do and cost thousands of dollars. And again, I was just a broke college student. I had a waiter job, but nothing that would pay for any type of a patent. So I remember that we had a law school at Georgia State University. So I said, okay, well, let me go to the law school. So again, walked right into law school, and there was somebody sitting down at one of those kind of cubicles as soon as you walk in through the door. And I told them hey, I'm a student here at Georgia State. I'm in the undergrad. I'm working on this idea. I don't know how to kind of do any of the patent stuff. Could you help me out? Help me figure this out? And they looked at me. They're probably like, who is this kid? Just like the same guy at med schools thought. But he said, okay, here are some cards. Email these guys, and then go from there. So I sent some email to a couple of people, and I ended up getting connected with somebody that needed to do some pro bono work, pro bono meaning free. So long story short, I ended up getting the patent done for free. So again, sometimes you just need to walk in the door and say what you want. But again, so it was around this same time that I was going to medical school. So my schedule was kind of busy, right? So I would go to medical school in the morning, 8 to 12, we had class, we're learning all these different things in the morning. And then from 12 to 1, again, I was at Morehouse School of Medicine, which isn't too far from here, and Georgia Tech, which is about 5 to 10 minute drive. So during lunch, I would drive and I would go pitch to investors different ideas. And then I would come back for anatomy lab at 1 o'clock. From 1 to 4 would be anatomy. And then from 4 to 5, I'd work out or chill or something of that sort. And then from 5 to 8 p.m., I said, this is a time for medical school. This is a time where I'm going to do nothing but study. Not on my phone, not on Instagram, not looking at TikTok. Well, TikTok wasn't popular then. But still, you get the point. I wasn't looking at social media. I was just studying. And then after that, from 8 to 11, I would just do whatever. Sometimes I would work on some stuff with the startup. Other times, I would hang out with my significant other, hang out with friends, something till around 11ish or so, and repeat and repeat. So this was my daily schedule. And so if I wasn't studying, I was working. If I wasn't working, I was studying. I was just trying to be somebody. This is from 2014. I had to scroll a lot to find my old things. And so the business failed, which many businesses do, but it taught me a couple of lessons. First lesson I learned from this is that you control your time doesn't control you. Basically meaning that, for example, for studying for medical school, I said you have 3 hours. So you need to figure out how you can be the most efficient in these 3 hours to study and get everything done that you need to do. Instead of multitasking and doing 10 different things inefficiently, you need to figure out how to do one thing. And you learn to control your time, and then you're able to balance and do other things that you want to do in addition to just that one thing. And I also learned that you need to be intentional. Again, intentional when studying or intentional in doing whatever you're doing. You need to be intentional and focus on that one thing. And then you also need to take action. So act on your ideas. The whole "I'll start tomorrow" thing, we always, kind of get into that thought pattern in our head. And one thing I realized that you don't have as much time in undergrad, but then in medical school, if you don't make time for the things that you want to do, and you say, oh, I'll wait till I'm a resident, or I'll wait till I'm in residency, you won't do it then. And then when you're in residency, you have less time, so then you wait and say, oh, I'll wait till I do it till I'm done with residency, and then you just never end up doing it. And I didn't want to be 80 on my deathbed and looking and saying, I wish I would have tried these things when I was younger, or done some of the things that I also wanted to do, or figured out a way. So every time that you have an idea or something that you want to do, you should act on it. You should act on what would you do if you knew you couldn't fail. So the whole I'll start tomorrow thing starts today. So I want to tell you guys a story about my first trauma patient. This is the first trauma patient I ever had. So medical school is set up that the first 2 years you go and you study, you're in the books for the most part, you're learning how the different organ systems work, you're learning how the heart works, how the gut works, you're learning all these like anatomy, physiology. And then the last 2 years of medical school are the clinical years. This is where you go and you work with different physicians. So you might work with a physician like a pediatric doctor, you might work with a emergency medicine doctors, you might work with internal medicine doctors. So you have these different rotations, so you look and you follow them, and if they do surgery, you follow their surgery, so you see the different specialties. And this one was trauma. This was at the hospital right down the street, Grady, which is like a level 1 trauma center. So basically they get everything. You got all the gunshots, all the stabbings, all the motor vehicle collisions, everything. And so it was our first day. It was me and another student. It was 7 o'clock in the morning. We're 2 happy medical students. We have our trauma shears, which are shears that you use to cut the clothing off so you're able to inspect the limbs and everything when they come in. And we have our beeper, like the beep, beep, beep. We have the beepers. We still use those today, but we had some beepers, and they gave us one, so we felt like we were part of the team. And it's probably 15 minutes into the shift. Beep, beep, beep. We get a beep. Says we got a level 1 trauma coming in, 19-year-old female, motor vehicle collision. And I'm like, okay, well, 19-year-old, that's kind of young, but all right. So we go down there, and everybody's in this room. So there's in what's called like the trauma base. So you have like the trauma surgeon in this room, you have the nurses, you have the medical student, you have basically the team is ready, so when the patient comes in and comes to the door, that they're ready to be attended to. So we're sitting there waiting. It's been a couple minutes, and then I hear like the wheels of the gurney come in, and they bring the patient in. And it's a young 19-year-old Caucasian female, and that was a little step back for me because I'm like, whoa, you're supposed to have the longest life expectancy out of all of us. What are you doing here? I'm guessing I'm going to see somebody like drunk guy got hit or something like that. So that was kind of the first little shock. So they transfer over to the bed. And we go and we're cutting off the garments so that everybody can examine it. And the trauma surgeon there examining them, and so they're trying to elicit different responses. So you like push on the fingernails to see if they open their eyes. This lady had what's called a GCS of 3, which is basically a scale that lets you know are their eyes opening, are they talking, are they moving. And she wasn't doing much of that, right? She would do like a sternum rub where you rub the sternum really hard to see if they open their eyes and get some type of response. Didn't get any response. So the trauma surgeon said, we need to call neurosurgery ASAP. So we're like, okay, this is getting serious. I was just a young guy interested in orthopedics. I just want to see some broken bones and then fix them, put them together, and let them go out the gate. So the neurosurgery resident, he comes down, and then he's doing his assessment. So he's doing similar things that the other trauma surgeon was doing. Like he's looking at her pupils, trying to see how they react. He's trying to see if he can elicit some type of reaction from her fingers. He's doing the rub. He's doing all these different exams. And then it gets like really quiet, super quiet. I mean, like you could hear a cotton ball fall on a pillow. It was that quiet. And he looked in the room and he said, if we don't get her upstairs in the next 5 minutes, she's going to die. And I'm like, whoa, like this is something that I wasn't really ready for. But now it's like, commotion, everybody's rushing to get her up to the room. They bring her to these elevators, these special elevators that you bring the patients to. We ask, like, hey, can we go upstairs to the OR? Of course, they're like, yeah, you're part of the team, go on upstairs. So we go upstairs to the operating room, and they get her on the bed, and then the only way I can describe the scene in the operating room was like organized chaos. Right, like everybody's running, trying to open different instruments to do the surgery. The neurosurgeons are coming in, they're putting on their gowns, but they're not tied all the way. And because this is an emergency, so they realized that she was having a bleed into her brain, and if they wouldn't be able to relieve the pressure off the bleed, she would unfortunately pass away. So probably within 90 seconds of her getting into the room, this guy had relieved the pressure basically by making a cut in the skull, and he had a skull in her hand. And so he relieved the pressure, relieved the brain bleed, she ended up living. And so we would see her, we would round on her during the week. So basically in the mornings, you have the team of physicians and the whole team taking care of the patient, and you go and you check out all the different patients. So we'd go and we see her, we talk to her parents, and her parents would tell us a little bit of the story, like, oh, she's 19, she just graduated from high school, she had all these different plans, and we never really expected this to happen, and so you never know what's gonna happen. And so we checked on her every day for about a week, and then after a week we switched services. So I don't know how she's doing. I hope that she had a full recovery and is doing well now. But this is our first day on service, first patient. This is the experience that we have. And so some things that I learned from this is that we're all on borrowed time, right? So everything can change in a split second. And number 2 is don't delay your dreams and hobbies. Figure out a way to incorporate them now, especially if there's things that you like to do. There was an undergraduate student who liked to bake, and baking was her thing. So she would bake cakes, and it was her passion. It kind of relieved her stress. So she would bake cakes, and then she would bring the cakes to different clinics. Like she would bring the cake to the HIV/AIDS clinic, or she'd bring it to the OBGYN clinic. And so she became known as a lady that would bake goods and bring them, and that was her way of making an impact. One of my other friends, who I went to medical school with, had a big thing for giving back. So he started this nonprofit called Project RAG, or Project Random Acts of Kindness. And so what he would do is he would create bags of essential goods, right? So these are toothbrush, water, all these essential goods, and he would go out and he would pass them out to the homeless. And so that was just something he was doing before he even started a nonprofit. But again, this is a way that he turned one of his passions and he incorporated into medicine. He got a couple of his other medical school friends to come out and help pass out bags to the homeless and everything. And another thing I learned is that healthcare is a beautiful thing. And all the time that you're putting in now, all the sacrifices you're doing, all the hours of studying and the countless nights and the travel, all this will eventually pay off because it's preparing you to be the person that you're going to be in order to make the impact that you're going to make in healthcare, whether that's being a doctor, whether that's being a pharmacist, a vet, all these things. And pay attention because it may be you one day, like how it was that neurosurgery resident who came in and saved this girl's life. It may be you. It may be the pharmacist that just knows the only medication to help this patient out, or you may be the veterinary person who is dealing with somebody's family dog, and you're the person that's going to make that call. So all these days and studying and all this will eventually pay off. How many of you have heard about the term imposter syndrome before? Anybody? Okay. And anybody knows what it means? Anybody can blurt anything out? Anything? Anybody? Okay. So this is what ChatGPT says about what imposter syndrome means. So they said imposter syndrome is a psychological pattern where individuals doubt their accomplishments and have a persistent internalized fear of being exposed as a fraud despite evidence of their competence. It's not a formal diagnosis, but it can lead to anxiety, self-doubt, and feelings of inadequacy, even among high achievers. And this is something that will likely probably happen to you at one point. It happens to a lot of us at one point, especially in the healthcare field. I remember between my first and second year, I took part of this program that was aimed at getting minorities into orthopedic surgery. And I knew for orthopedic surgery, it was pretty competitive, so you have to start kind of early in order to prepare yourself. And in this program, they team you up with a physician at a different place. So for me, I was in Los Angeles. Again, I like to travel, so this is another way to travel. So I was in Los Angeles with this doctor, and again, I would go in and see surgeries with them. I would go in the clinic and do a lot of the activities. And it just so happened to be that we had what was called these traveling European fellows. So basically, it was a group of physicians from Europe that would come to the United States and go and make stops at different hospitals and different organizations throughout the United States. And so they would go and see what the doctors did for surgery, and then it'd be like some leisure activities, a day of leisure activities. And this day, they came, they saw surgeries the day before, and then the day of leisure activities, it was fun stuff. It was like a hike in the morning where you can see one of the beautiful landscape of LA and the coast. And then after that, we got some food. And then at some point, we were at this country club. And in my head, I was like, I've never been to a country club before. Like this is all new to me. This isn't how I grew up. This is something completely different that I hadn't been ever really exposed to. And I remember it was towards the end of the day. It was me and the physician that I was paired with. We were in the locker room, and I looked at him and I was like, "Do you ever feel like you don't belong? Like this wasn't really like made for me?" And I remember like it was yesterday. He put down his stuff. He looked me dead in my eyes, and he was like, "No, you belong. Like everything that you put towards you've worked for this. You 100% belong here, and never forget the fact that you belong because you worked for this and you deserve this." And that's something that stuck with me throughout my training, because at different times you'll feel like, I don't know, maybe I'm feeling a little bit of imposter syndrome. A lot of us feel it when we first start in training, when we graduate from whatever school it may be, graduate from PA school or graduate from medical school, when you're a resident and you're seeing a patient for the first time. And you're like, oh, I'm the doc. Okay, all right, this is it. So just always know that you guys belong. No matter wherever you're at in your track, you've worked to be here, and you put in the hours and you put in the work. And healthcare needs you. Healthcare needs every single one of you as well. And it doesn't just need you. It doesn't just need another white coat, but it needs your individuality. It needs your uniqueness. It needs your story, because we all have a story. We all grew up different. No two of us are the same here. We all grew up in different households, different backgrounds, different religions, different ethnicities, different cultural norms. And all of those things are what makes us individuals, but also what helps connect us with other people, especially in healthcare. So your story and your passions, we all have one. And these are the things that wake you up in the morning, that brings you energy, right? That you're excited to do in the morning. And so how do you find your story, right? A lot of us may be applying to different schools. They may be applying to medical school, pharmacy school, and you're trying to figure out, what am I going to put in my personal statement, or what am I going to put in the application? Like, what makes me any different than anybody else? So we call it the 3 pillars to finding your story. So the first pillar is reflect. So what life experiences have you had, right? Did you grow up where a loved one was sick, and so you were helping take care of that sick one that had an impact on your life? Or did you have an injury? Did you undergo surgery so you know what it's like to be on the patient's side? Maybe you had a family dog that was really sick, that really impacted you and wanted you to go to veterinary school. So what are the experiences that you've had? Number 2, or the second pillar, is going to be connect. So how do these experiences help you relate to others? For example, for me, when I was in undergraduate, I tore my ACL in my knee, and I had to undergo surgery. So I know what it's like to be on the other side, not knowing how the surgery is going to go, not knowing how the recovery is going to go, losing a little bit part of your self-expression, because I used to work out and I like doing those kind of things. And so now when I speak with patients, especially undergoing those similar types of surgeries, I can relate to them because I've been there before, right? So how have these experiences, again, help you relate to others? And then the third one is act. So how can you bring these perspectives into healthcare? What can you do, right? How can you bring these perspectives into healthcare? So question time. So I want everybody to think to themselves, what is one thing that has happened in your life that has made your life harder? Don't overthink it, but think about it. What is this one thing that's happened in your life? It could be the way you grew up. You grew up and you didn't have your parents when you grew up, or you grew up with 2 parents, or you came from a poor household, or you came from a rich household, and there's a lot of pressure on you, right? So what is one thing that has happened in your life that has made your life harder? And the second part to this is, how can that make you a better future doctor, pharmacist, dentist, or whatever else it may be? And we are typically our own worst critics. So what we're going to do is we're going to pair up. Everybody's going to pair up with the person next to you, and you're going to tell them that one thing that's happened in your life, and they're going to come up with some ideas for you on how would that make you a better pharmacist, doctor, whatever else it may be. And so we're just going to have 2 minutes to speak, and then I'll time it, and I'll click switch, and then the other person can talk. If we have one odd number where there's 3 people, then maybe like a minute each. All right, so you got 2 minutes starting now. Again, tell them what is one thing that's happened in your life that could make your life a little harder. Okay, get ready to switch in about 10 seconds, and then the next person talk. Okay, swap. Okay, we got about 30 seconds to wrap it up. All right, let's wrap it up and give yourselves a round of applause for participating. Very good. So all of us have our own stories, and sometimes it takes somebody else to look at our story to tell us that we have a story, but we all have our own stories. And so my story, again, started out like this. I was 16, introvert, didn't like speaking to anybody, kind of like a ghost, right? And then through hard work and following my passion, I've been able to do things like see the traveling fellows from Europe that day, or match into orthopedic surgery, write a book. I spent, again, a month in Bogota, Colombia, learning from surgeons in South America. I ended up doing an orthopedic surgery podcast, and I ended up working for NFL teams, going to the NFL Combine and taking care of some of those same players that I used to watch on TV when I was a kid with my mom. So anything is possible, and you don't have to fit the so-called mold. Make your own mold and be the person you always dreamed that you wanted to be. Thank you, guys.